Welcome to the MacArthur Memorial Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Williams. Join me as we explore the life and legacy of General of the Army Douglas MacArthur and discuss a wide range of military history topics, from the American Civil War to the Korean War. We are back with a bonus episode this month, and it's because we just received some very good news. General Douglas MacArthur's iconic cap, one of the most amazing artifacts in our museum, is a finalist for a conservation prize from VAM, the Virginia Association of Museums. Now, currently, the cap is on VAM's Virginia Top 10 Endangered List, and this list helps raise public awareness of amazing artifacts in Virginia museums and the importance of preserving these artifacts. And we are incredibly honored to be on this list this year. And of course, congratulations to all of the other museums on the list. But we're on the list, and now comes the fun part. VAM invites members of the public to vote for the artifact they would like to see receive a $1,000 conservation prize. Now, MacArthur's cap has been assessed by a conservation specialist, and we have a plan for its conservation. But winning this prize would definitely help jumpstart our efforts to fully fund this conservation project. So your vote can help preserve MacArthur's cap. We'll put a voting link in the episode description, and you can vote daily from February 11th through February 28th, 2025. But let's talk about the hat. I'm sitting here today with Jim Zobel, MacArthur Memorial Archivist, and Corey Thornton, the MacArthur Memorial Curator. And Jim, why don't we start with you? Give us a history of the hat. Do we know when it was made, and when does MacArthur start wearing it?
The only way we know anything about the hat is because of interviews that his wife Jean gave, and as well, he had an aide named Colonel Sidney Huff that worked with him in the Philippines, and he wrote a book that was kind of like a personal look at MacArthur rather than a military history look at him, and they both talk about the hat. And Huff said that it is created during that period when MacArthur is the military advisor to the Philippines. This is from 1935 to 1941, when he was bestowed that rank of field marshal in 1936. But Huff said that it was made in Manila, and the first time you ever see MacArthur wearing it is about early 1937, when he's dressed up in uniform at a parade with the president, Manuel Quezon, who was the president of the Philippine Commonwealth of that time. So we know that it is created in Manila, Philippines, and we know that the first time you ever see it is that late 1930s time period.
Sometimes people refer to it as a Philippine Field Marshal cap, and that seems to be very controversial. Now, is it a Philippine Field Marshal cap, or is it a standard U.S. Army general's cap?
It meets the U.S. Army requirements, and MacArthur would always say that when people said things like that he had created his own uniform, he would always say that, no, I am proud to wear the United States uniform as a United States officer, and all the things that I wear are direct in code with the United States Army. So it's an Army cap that is worn during that time period when he's the Philippine Field Marshal, but it's the cap he's going to wear for the rest of his life. That one cap. There will never be any different cap that he puts on and uses except in really extreme circumstances.
And we know that obviously his aides, his wife, Jean, they tried to make other caps for him. And there are a few others kind of in other collections, but this is the only one that he wears.
Yes, this is the one that is created during that time period. It's the one that he wears on Corregidor, the one that he leaves with, and he'll wear it throughout his career. And like you said, people will give him new ones, but he will always be, no, I don't want it. You know, I'm fine with this one. I think the only time that it has any work done on it is in the about 1948 time frame, because it had been in the rain, had been in everything, and they took the cap and they gave it to a Japanese hat maker, and he restitched it. He put in a plastic cover on the top so it wouldn't deteriorate anymore from there. And so that was the only time we know that it has been worked on or refitted. I think Jean had a khaki shirt that was refitted on it.
This cap has seen some incredible moments in American and really world history. Can you give us a rundown of the history that this cap sees?
Well, it's the one he wears on the PT boat, and because it got so wet there, it shrunk. And so when he lands in Australia, you see him with the white hat. And that's what I was talking about, those extreme circumstances where a different one is worn.
So he actually can't wear the hat when he gets to Australia because it's...
At first, yeah,
okay.
But they stretch it out. And so when he's at Spencer Station in Melbourne, when he arrives there, he's wearing the regular cap, the khaki cap.
All right, so he's wearing it when he's in Australia.
Sure.
He's wearing it when he's doing a lot of those "I shall return" statements.
Well, he wears it when he makes the landing in the Philippines in 1944. He wears it when he's at the surrender ceremony in Japan. And then again, it's on him when he's throughout Korea. He'll change leather jackets and other accoutrements, but he'll never change that hat. And even 1961, when he goes to the Philippines for his sentimental tour, he's wearing that hat again. And it is the iconic piece of Douglas MacArthur. I mean, there's no other thing that you could look at and say, oh, that's Douglas MacArthur right there.
And when you think about all of the historic figures that he met with while wearing that hat, and I think of oral histories that I've seen where people will mention he's not really the MacArthur you think he is until he puts that cap on. He takes it off, he's normal, he's human. He puts it on and people around the world are like, that's General MacArthur.
And that's what Lord Mountbatten said. He goes to visit MacArthur in Manila. It's like June, July of 1945. And he was saying, I thought I was with an academic professor, because he didn't seem like this military person of all military people I had met in my life. And then they left the headquarters and Mountbatten went out first, and he turns around and MacArthur's coming and he's got the hat on. He said, totally different persona. He looked like he was about 10 feet tall, and authority was just written all over him. And this comes from Lord Mountbatten, who's met probably every great person there was up to that point. So it's quite a statement.
And I think it's cool, too. We have a lot of campaign buttons in our collection that don't even feature words sometimes. It's, when there are attempts to help him become the nominee to run for president of the United States, you have buttons that are just a caricature of the cap and maybe the pipe sometimes. And that was enough to say, I support this person for president of the United States. You didn't need his name. You didn't need MacArthur for president. And then you see it in them trying to replicate it in Captain America comics and other, everybody, this hat is just a symbol of so much. So, Corey, moving on to you and kind of the curatorial side of things, obviously this cap has seen a lot of history. It's been in a variety of climates, as we've established, and it was worn by General MacArthur pretty constantly for decades. So tell us about the materials the hat is made of and how these materials have fared over time.
Well, as Jim mentioned, it was made from a khaki-colored twill cotton, but the crown cover at the very top was replaced, as Jim mentioned also. The material for the last replacement, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, was from an Army uniform shirt. I think that comes from Huff's account. The large cap band that's wrapped around the sides and the front is a khaki light gold colored silk and cotton woven braid. But it also was standard to many of the, if you look at the blue dress hat from the period, essentially it's the same construction, only MacArthur takes some liberties with the oak leaves and such. So as Jim was saying, it's based on the American service hat. It also had a large band around it. The U.S. Eagle emblem on the front, as well as the oak leaves and the acorns around the band, were originally constructed with a yellow metallic thread. They called it bullion. And this gold bullion was also used to construct the oak leaves on the leather brim. The gold metallic core braid chin strap, with brass U.S. Armies at each end is also just above the brim. That's actually a chin strap that I don't think we have photos. I doubt he ever wore the actual chin strap, but it sits up there for use as needed. I think a lot of officers employed it that way. So the inside of the cap was lined with silk satin, and it was sewn underneath a brown leather band that's stitched to the inside of the edge all the way around the cap. So the materials have fared out poorly, but if you think about it, considering their age and use, you could also view them as having lasted the test of time. Of course, it's been well preserved, and especially in museum case and the right environmental conditions. The cap's enemy, you might say, was primarily sweat. And of course, the elements that created it, salt spray, heat, as Jim was mentioning earlier. So most of the issues with all the cap that are happening with the cap are coming essentially from that original enemy of sweat.
About, like, when you see pictures of him without the hat, and I feel like there are very few of those compared to all the pictures with it, but when you see the pictures of him without it, he's got his hair kind of combed back, slicked back. Is it like hair product as well that's inside the cap? That's
what the conservator that we had take a look at the hat speculated on. I think hair products were not uncommon at the time, so it's very possible. And it's pretty dark in some areas, especially at the top where it's not just sweat. Likely there's some hair products kind of mixed in there too. So the dark stains on the cap front, again, that's in the degradation on the bullion, the embroidery, the eagle, all of that indicates, sweat and all the salt associated within one's sweat has degraded over time. The metal threads and braids are tarnished and discolored. There's some structural damage, and there's thread splitting all over the cap. Inside, the crown lining is darkened, and again, the silk lining has become brittle. And then the sweatband inside also is discolored. It has some abrasions in areas, so it's starting to break up around the button rivets that are on the side.
So it needs conservation work.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
So what's the plan then? How do you preserve something like this?
Well, the plan is to coordinate with a conservator and have the necessary work performed on the cat. Specifically, the cap will be surface cleaned, and the conservator uses a low-powered vacuum suction to remove light surface particulates that are soiling, within the cap. The stains are evidence of historical use, as we know, and so they will be retained but stabilized. The metal elements will all be carefully cleaned, as well as the leather bill. Will be cleaned with the appropriate cleaning agents that conservators use. The interior and exterior will be carefully humidified, which will allow some of the areas of structural damage to be brought back into alignment before they are supported. The exterior damage to the twill and braids will be secured using small stitched patches of supports. It'll help reinforce portions of the cap there. And then the braid will be supported using an overlay of a fine nylon material stitched to secure it, to keep it in place. And then finally, the support for the cap for both display and storage. A mount will be made that will have a slight handling edge so that the cap no longer has to be touched directly to when it's moved around. We make every effort not to do that anyway, but still this will help with that. So when we do have to move it around, we're not directly putting our hands on. Whether we have gloves on or not, we always have gloves on, of course.
And as you mentioned, how you display it is also important after conservation. So that'll be part of that conservation project, making sure it's mounted on something to keep it structurally stable.
Yes.
And then make it easier for you to move it when needed.
Exactly. Yeah. And the conservator is going to construct that mount for us.
And I guess I should also add that we have a new case for it. It's currently in that new case. Do you want to describe the new case a little bit and how that's going to help support this conservation as well? Sure.
Well, the case is airtight, like hopefully most museum storage cases are, as you see them in museums. It has lighting inside, LED, low levels of lighting to help highlight the hat. But it also, it's supposed to, as hopefully a normal museum case, typically does. I know this case does it. It keeps as many pollutants and particulates from getting in the case as possible. So we have it prominently sitting in Gallery 9 right now, well lit. And when you come around the corner, I'm told, and I certainly can verify this, it hits you with that lighting and everything else.
It's a wow moment, for sure.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And it's good that we can keep it in something that controls temperature and humidity a bit better, too.
Yes, we do have environmental controls. We have, I won't go into all the
science of museum work, right?
I've already gone long enough. But we have a way of reducing the humidity in there.
Any final thoughts? How unique is this artifact? Why should it matter to people around the world?
Well, I think our objective is not to change the character of this historic cap, but to support the existing structural damage and preserve it. And, it is, the cap was not only witness to truly historical events, but worn by the very man who made the decisions and gave the orders to carry out the actions of those events. So, there's a lot of history packed right in that hat.
Well, Napoleon had what?
20 hats, 15 hats.
200 hats?
200.
That he wore throughout his time, and MacArthur has one. So it is unique, it's significant, and it's probably the biggest thing that there is.
And it means so many things to people around the world.
Sure.
Liberation, victory over fascism, militarism, civilian control of the military.
It's also a beacon of a promise to return.
Of hope.
Of hope. He promises to return to the Philippines, and he does. Yeah. But it's like you said, it's a beacon of hope, and it's very recognizable.
Any other final thoughts?
Vote.
Vote, yes.
Please vote.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. And I think this is the Virginia Association of Museums' 14th year running this program.
Here.
Yes, and I think it's benefited over 200 different institutions just by highlighting how important these items in our collections are and how the public can help in terms of conservation. So I think we'll put a link to VAM in the episode description if you want to learn more about them and the work they do. But again, we will put the voting link in the episode description, and you can vote once daily from February 11th through February 28th, 2025. We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you have questions, comments, or topic suggestions, the MacArthur Memorial team wants to hear from you. You can reach us at macarthurmemorial@norfolk.gov or find us on X at MacArthur1880 or on Facebook and Instagram as MacArthur Memorial.